After spending 8 years in this space, I'm not so sure if the technology itself has really advanced, but the players in this industry are excellent at coining new terms. As someone inside the industry, but still a bit of an outsider, I think I can be bold enough to say things like this. New buzzwords can make it look like there's progress, but in fact it's just repackaging ideas that I had already studied 7 or 8 years ago. Those ideas were already being explored in this space 9 or 10 years ago. So these new terms, take colored coins, for example, reappeared as NFTs with new branding, and it felt like a breakthrough, but it wasn't truly new. So this has become a kind of culture where terms come and go, rise and vanish. The average person has a hard time distinguishing between real innovation and rebranding. You might remember I uploaded a video using Python to generate keys. At the time, I thought I had to use dice and coins to do it properly. I ran that data through Python to generate a public key, then used that public key to generate a Bitcoin address. And then I printed it all out and did the rest manually. My wife watched me doing this by hand the entire time. I was groaning the whole time, struggling with it. Of course, I made countless errors, but honestly, there was no one in Korea I could learn this from. Even online, there wasn't much reliable information available. Watching me, my wife joked, "Is this the Stone Age or something?" "You said this was cutting edge," she said. Back then, public opinion was even more skeptical than today. Still, I pushed through and did it anyway. And I wasn't the only one. Many early Bitcoin holders went through similar struggles. Running Python scripts, or using tools like BitAddress, or printing out paper wallets and doing transactions manually. This kind of DIY culture was simply the norm, but after 2017, technical self-reliant users became a minority. More everyday people, if I can call them that. Those unfamiliar with the culture of self-custody started flooding into the scene. They rely on exchanges, and they also started relying on hardware wallets. But for early Bitcoiners, hardware wallets were actually frowned upon. They existed back then, of course, but people would say, "Why trust that? Just make your own." We built our own solutions, often with broken or discarded computers if we weren't using paper wallets. We'd repurpose old machines ones we were going to throw away. We'd remove the wireless chips entirely, so it couldn't connect to anything wirelessly, turning it into a cold, offline device like a terminal just for me. But machines are fragile. Without a paper backup, anything could go wrong. That said, we could basically replace computer parts ourselves. The early crowd in this space had that skill set, so DIY methods were encouraged. People who were slightly less technical, like me, might skip the machine and use Python scripts and paper instead. People with even less experience used BitAddress. And for those below even that level, those who didn't want to bother with any of that, just bought a hardware wallet. Now that staking is becoming popular, the risks have started showing up in that space. Talking with friends about all this, we wonder if we can ever go back to that time. Honestly, I think it's almost impossible now. So those questions we were asking, Bayul actually got it working with Python. It's pretty amazing, right? And if you try it yourself, you'll see. It's genuinely mind-blowing. And once you generate a wallet and actually send and receive Bitcoin from it, you'll feel a chill down your spine. Because you realize, I made this all by myself. What are we usually accustomed to? Whenever we use an exchange or a bank, we have to disclose our identity. Even online, it's the same. You still have to prove who you are, but when proving I am me, it's no longer about proving I'm Otaman, it's about proving I am who I say I am. That's the kind of identity Jack Dorsey envisions in Web 5.0, and it's something I've been thinking about as well. So I asked a question. How do you prove that you are you without ever saying I'm Otaman? What does that really mean? Most answers didn't quite hit the mark. But someone mentioned Bitcoin private keys, and I thought, yes, when you experience Bitcoin, you do prove that you are you. But no one knows I'm Otaman, right? In the traditional system, I prove I'm Otaman from birth through the registration my parents did when I was a baby. And from there, we build an ID system tied to my resident registration number. I used to take that for granted too, but then I generated a Bitcoin address completely on my own, randomly, as it should be, and when I sent funds to it, they actually arrived. At that moment, this innovation hit me. Yes, my wife laughed and called it Neolithic, but those who get it know. You realize this thing is going to change everything. It gives you goosebumps. You've just experienced what it means to be your own third party. Can we ever go back to that culture again? Because it was a culture. You'd meet someone and send coins on the spot. Rogerver did that too. He used to give away whole Bitcoins, 1 BTC at a time. Of course, we couldn't do that, so we'd hand out 0.01 Bitcoin instead. In that video I uploaded, where I generated a Bitcoin address with Python. I'm telling you, until you try it yourself, you won't understand how it feels. So even if you send just 0.01 Bitcoin, your hands literally tremble, and then you wait 10 minutes just watching. Last year I uploaded a video on how to create a paper wallet using BitAddress, and after I posted it, some people thanked me, others criticized me. But when you actually create a paper wallet and use it to send and receive coins, now you get a real taste of peer-to-peer exchange. Even elites who talk about the travel rule, if they actually tried it, they'd realize, wow, what we're doing is nonsense, it's meaningless. They would come to that realization. So when it comes to real Bitcoin, people are too nervous to use it directly, so I thought, let's mirror Bitcoin. I developed the technology to mirror it. I flipped the switch at just the right time in August 2020. Development cost mainly came down to labor. And we spent about $250,000 on the engineers and the whole process. There were significant overhead costs too, including electricity, because we were mirroring Bitcoin exactly, so the technology was there. It was all ready. But the company struggled, so we shut it down and scattered. A few months later, Bitcoin went vertical and I became a YouTuber. That's how it all unfolded. But honestly, this isn't something just anyone can pull off. The technology itself is highly specialized. In theory, sure, it's doable. But no one in Korea has actually done it, except us. And even if someone else tried, they'd need to spend just as much. So yeah, with all that effort, we made these paper wallets. This is what a paper wallet actually looks like. We place them in these holders and install the wallet app, register it on iPhone or Galaxy, and so on. So there used to be this culture of injecting value and distributing it. Maybe it's time to bring that culture back. And the printer holds all the data anyway. Even if you receive Bitcoin this way, if you go on to use Python and create your own paper wallet, send from it and get used to handling it, you'll stop being afraid of Bitcoin. At that point, you'll be able to build your own private Swiss bank by printing wallets on a disposable computer, and maybe even smash the hard drive with a hammer as a ritual, then generate 10 final addresses and stick with only those, and store your assets there for long-term safekeeping. Some people message me at midnight, what if it doesn't go through? If you're that anxious about it, then maybe this isn't for you. That's the downside of paper wallets. They can burn, quite literally. And amateurs tend to make mistakes when moving funds online. That's why hardware wallets, though they are electronic devices, combine the benefits of both hot wallets, which stay connected to the internet, and cold wallets like paper. So they're not bad, but they're not exactly the gold standard either. The true foundation is generating a private key, building a public key, and deriving an address. You go through that full process yourself. Write just a few lines of code. It's not that much. Try it and you'll see. You might hesitate at first, but once you try it, it's actually really simple. Try it out. Print your wallet on paper. Printing something, everyone knows how to do that. Print it, send Bitcoin to it, then retrieve it with a mobile wallet. When you go through this whole process, you gain confidence, and here's what happens next. When you meet someone, you naturally start talking about Bitcoin and even send some on the spot. Let them experience it, and download the app. I'll send you some, now send it back. Does it really take 10 minutes? See, it shows up in 15 seconds. You do things like that, then head over to the Blockchain Explorer and see all the transaction details. And as you look through it, you start realizing this is a true revolution. But it's something you have to feel, physically experience. Now, after 8 years in this space, I keep going back to how it was back then. At meetups 8 years ago, this kind of hands-on activity was the culture. Sure, it styles varied a bit depending on personality, but gradually things shifted toward trading, toward investment and speculation. And suddenly it didn't feel like my world anymore. But we must not forget the spirit of it. Even if you use exchanges, even if you stake your coins or use hardware wallets, you should still have this foundation underneath it all. I believe we can rebuild this culture, a culture rooted in self-sovereignty and understanding, whether you're rich or not, old or young. We need a culture where anyone can learn and practice the fundamentals. And this community, how precious it is if we build on this community. Back in the day, I didn't have supporters like you behind me. So even though I had some powerful technology, everyone around me was part of the mainstream, and they just looked at it as numbers and totally missed the deeper value. But this network, this community, understands the value. You can practice here. You can mirror Bitcoin and train yourself. That opportunity doesn't come around often. Even with Ethereum, they issue test ether for practice. So you can train and experiment in that sandbox. But Bitcoin doesn't have that, nothing like it. In a way, it's cold and unforgiving. That hesitation people feel, that's what leads to mistakes and accidents. And so people end up relying on others. They think they have to. But what if we could eliminate that reliance altogether and build a culture of teaching each other with just a computer and a printer? A smartphone, a computer, a printer? That's all you need to become completely independent. Truly self-reliant, dependent on no one. You can create a new account. And that becomes not only your account, but your identity. In Web 5.0, you can prove that you are you without revealing anything else. That's a profound innovation. But just because my name is Otaimen, that alone isn't revolutionary. But we tend to cling to that name, that label. What we need isn't to prove we're Otaimen, but to prove simply, I am me. It's hard to imagine at first, but in reality we already do it all the time. When we travel abroad, whether I say I'm Otaimen or Taimeno, What difference does it make? What matters is confirming that I am me. That's the kind of world that opens up in the metaverse, Ganos. So yes, Bitcoin's price matters. But beyond that, Bitcoin represents something deeply anti-civilizational. A financial system that, from the mainstream's perspective, completely disrupts the established order. To experience that by doing it yourself. I believe that's incredibly important. Too many people never try it, they're afraid of it. Now the space is dominated by investors, so they think it's enough to just use a hardware wallet. But even if you use a hardware wallet, using it while understanding the underlying algorithms versus just following instructions blindly without understanding is a totally different experience. The feeling is completely different.